does a $25,000 bottle of Burgundy have to do with the $14 Pinot Noir that you grabbed at Trader Joe's last Tuesday? Let me put this another way. What would happen to that $14 bottle if the $25,000 bottle didn't even exist? Because most people think that the fine wine world, the collectors, the auctions, the guys paying six figures for a single bottle is completely disconnected from the rest of the normal world. It's a parallel universe for rich people that has nothing to do with the wine that you actually drink on a Wednesday night. And I think that's actually exactly backward. I think the top of the wine world is the reason the rest of it works. And tonight, I want to show you why. Welcome, welcome. I'm John. This is Wine with John. Let's get into it. So, let's start with a little bit of perspective. The global fine wine market, the whole thing, every collectible bottle being traded on every platform in the whole entire world is worth about $35 billion. And that does sound like a lot, right? The US bond market is worth over $50 trillion. The global stock market is north of $100 trillion. The art market alone is about $68 billion, double that of wine. Fine wine, as a financial market, it's a rounding error. It's the stuff that falls between the couch cushions of global capital. And yet, 97% of wealth managers surveyed in April said they expect demand for fine wine to rise in 2026. Over a third of their clients now allocate 21 to 30% of their total wealth to wine. A year ago, only 2% of their clients put more than a fifth of their wealth into wine, and this year, 36% do. 2 to 36 in 12 months. Late in March, Acker Wines held their La Paulée auction in New York. I participated in it. It's a big event for wine collectors, and I admit that my cellar has a couple hundred bottles of wine that it didn't have before because of this auction. It lasts 3 days, $25 million in total sales, 460 new world records. And the headline, a single bottle of 1945 Domaine de la Romanée-Conti sold for $812,000. A standard 750 milliliter bottle. Not a case, not a collection, one bottle, and to be very clear, not in my collection. So now, here's the thing. None of that, the auctions and the allocations and the investment indices, none of it is the point. The financial market for fine wine is interesting, but it's actually not because of the money. It's important because of what the money signals. It signals that wine is worth taking seriously, that this category, fermented grape juice, contains something so extraordinary that people will build vaults for it. They'll insure it, and they'll trade it across borders and hold it for decades. And that signal changes everything downstream. It changes it for the better and for the worse. All right, so let me try something. Think about cars for a second. So most people, they drive Toyotas, Hondas, maybe a Hyundai or a Kia. That's gotten surprisingly nice, by the way, over the last few years. And that's great, by the way, because these are great cars. They get you where you need to go. They're reliable. They're affordable. And nobody's arguing with a Civic except my older son, who's developed some anti-Honda car snobbery since I bought one a decade ago. But here's my question. Does Ferrari hurt Toyota? No. Ferrari helps Toyota. The existence of Ferrari gives the entire automotive category cultural significance. It makes the word cars mean something more than transportation. So the kid who puts a Ferrari poster on his bedroom wall at 14 might drive a Civic at 25, but he cares about cars in a way he wouldn't if the category topped out at Camry. Ferrari creates the dream. Toyota captures the dreamer. So wine works kind of the same way. So Burgundy Grand Cru, it's the Ferrari poster. So Romanée-Conti, Musigny, Chambertin, most people will never get a chance to drink them. Most people are never even going to see them in person. But the fact that they exist, that a single bottle of fermented grape juice can sell for $25,000 or $800,000 tells the world that wine is worth taking seriously, that this isn't just a beverage, that it contains something worth pursuing, studying, arguing about, and traveling for. And that cultural signal, it doesn't stay at the top. It trickles down to every wine shelf in every grocery store in America. Because the reason wine gets an entire aisle and beer gets a cooler isn't because wine outsells beer. It doesn't. It's because wine has cultural gravity that beer doesn't. And that gravity comes from the top. If you remove that top, the bottom doesn't get stronger. It gets flatter, less interesting, less worth caring about. Wine without a fine wine tier is just another drink in the cooler. Let's make this concrete. So, 3 case studies. I'm going to do Champagne, Bordeaux, and Burgundy, and watch how prestige trickles down. Champagne. Everybody knows champagne. It's the single most universally recognized wine category on planet Earth. When you pop a cork at midnight on New Year's Eve, nobody in the room needs a wine education to understand what just happened. That's true cultural penetration. And where did it come from? It came from centuries of association with royalty, luxury, celebration, exclusivity. The fine wine tier of champagne, Dom Perignon, Cru, Salon, these built the mythology. And the mythology, it made it possible for Moet to sell millions of cases to people who never thought about wine for more than 30 seconds. The prestige end, it built the brand. That accessible end captured the volume. Bordeaux, bigger volume, same dynamic. So the classified gross, Lafite, Margaux, Albrion, they put Bordeaux on the map as a serious, collectible, world-class category. And that reputation has elevated every Cabernet and Merlot blend for the next 2 centuries. When Napa Valley exploded in the 70s and 80s, it wasn't selling California red wine. It was selling the Bordeaux dream with an American accent. The aspiration came from the top. The market grew from the bottom. But here's my favorite example, Burgundy and Oregon. So in 1979, a winemaker named David Lett entered his Willamette Valley Pinot Noir in a blind tasting in Paris against top Burgundies. It held its own. And that was the moment that Oregon was put on the wine map. Then in 1987, the Drouhin family, which is one of Burgundy's most prestigious houses, they established Domaine Drouhin, Oregon, Burgundian royalty investing in American soil. Today, the Willamette Valley has over 700 wineries. It's one of the most respected Pinot Noir regions on the planet. And every single one of those wineries benefits from the cultural capital that Burgundy built. When somebody picks up a $20 Oregon Pinot, they're benefiting from the fact the Romanée-Conti exists. They might not know it, but the reason Pinot Noir is seen as elegant and interesting, rather than just another red wine, is because the top of that pyramid is extraordinary. So here's something that I notice in the shop, behind the bar, and at tastings. The people who stay interested in wine, not for a month or a season, but for years, for a lifetime, they actually have one thing in common. They know there's more. Not more to buy, more to understand, more to taste, more to explore. There's always a region they haven't visited or a grape they haven't tried, a vintage they've read about but never opened. That open horizon, the feeling that you could spend 50 years in wine and still be surprised, it's what keeps people engaged. But it also intimidates, a consequence that us as an industry has to address. Now, I do want to address the other side of this. That same depth that creates the rabbit hole, it does make wine seem unapproachable. It's intimidating, it's snobby, and we have to battle that constantly. We have to battle it in the same way to remind people that Ferrari, it's not a flying machine. And an $800,000 bottle of Romanée-Conti is ultimately still just fermented grape juice too. The ladder has to have a bottom rung you can reach, and that's on us. But where does that depth come from? It comes from the top. It comes from the fact that collecting exists, that cellaring exists, that people track vintages the way some people track watchmaking or jazz recordings. You don't have to become a collector to benefit from the fact that collecting is possible. But knowing the path exists changes how you relate to the entire category. So let's think about it this way. So if wine topped out at grocery store shelves, if there were no auctions and no rare bottles, no decades old vintages, no allocation lists, no vignerons and Burgundy hand sorting the grapes at 5 in the morning, wine would just be a commodity. It would be pleasant and forgettable. There'd be nothing to aspire to, and there'd be nothing to chase. There'd be no rabbit hole to fall down. And that rabbit hole, that's really the whole point. The rabbit hole is what turns a casual drinker into an enthusiast into an evangelist into the person who changes what their friends drink on a Saturday night. Collectability, it creates engagement. Engagement creates community. Community creates culture. And the culture is the reason that wine is the most interesting beverage category on the planet. Beer is bigger, spirits are flashier, but wine has depth, and that depth comes from the top. So when I see the headlines, $800,000 for a bottle of wine, and billionaires stacking Burgundy in Freeport vaults, and wealth managers putting wine next to gold and sovereign bonds, I don't see a world that's disconnected from the rest of us. I see the engine that makes the rest of it run. Fine wine and everyday wine, they aren't two separate worlds. They're the same world at different altitudes. The view is different up there, sure. The air is thinner, and most of us are never going to make the climb. But the mountain is the reason the valley has a view at all. Tonight, it's a reminder that the top of the ladder isn't just for people at the top, it's what makes the ladder worth climbing. So next time you open that $14 bottle on a Wednesday night, your Côte d'Aron, your Wilmette Pinot, your supermarket champagne, know that somewhere there's a collector holding that same grape from that same tradition, but in a temperature controlled vault. And that's not the opposite of what you're doing. It's part of the reason that what you're doing matters. Because every single category needs a poster on the wall. I'm John. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next week.